And welcome to this live stream of the Dental Guys. I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And I'm John, the Dental Guy, and welcome back. If you joined us just a little bit ago for a live stream with the financial update, we like the financial update stuff because it's right where we've been the last few weeks. But frankly, Wes, I am ready to get back to the clinical side of dentistry and to stuff like this, geeking out about science, about chemistry, about what's going on with the EPA amalgam, the final rule. Don't you love when things are called like the final? It sounds like a video game. It sounds like a novel. The final
It's here.
rule.
It's here.
It's
You
here.
know, just for those that are listening this late in the evening on the East Coast, I appreciate you joining us. It's 8:45. We're live streaming. It's been a long day. Normally, my Monday, John, is it's a 7 to 2 straight through, right? It's one of those straight sixes, straight sevens, whatever you want to call it. Whatever straight you pull, we pull a 7 to 2 on Mondays, and then we have that afternoon for doing admin, whatever it might be. You know, I usually have administrative meetings and that type of thing. But here lately, John, it's been guns blazing. Normally, I only have 1.5 hygiene on Mondays. Now I have 3 hygienists, and we're there at 7. We have meetings at 7:10 to 7:20, and then 7:20 to 7:30. We have a treatment planning meeting with my new assistants. And then from 7:45, we have our production meeting, which is our normal meeting we have with everyone. But we're running 3 hygienists in on Monday. And let me just tell you right now, I know everyone is pushing so hard right now. I mean, we're looking at each other at the end of these days, getting caught up with the backlog of patients, and we're all tired. And I know you're tired. Yeah. And it's been good. You know, we're encouraged. I think John and I are encouraged clinically. I'll just say that we are encouraged clinically because patients are coming in, they're getting things done. The PPE is definitely taking a toll on dentistry, right? From a standpoint of like how you have to operate, what you're always thinking about, you know, and there's a practicality to these things that you really doesn't come through. And that's for another conversation. But John, you said it, July 14th or 15th it is, right? Is just around the corner. I didn't want to be first out of the gate on this amalgam separator thing, right? My office was a build-out 15 years ago. It's a modern office, and things were built and designed correctly, which I'm thankful for. And I know, John, you have a modern office, and it was built and designed correctly to where we can do things and add things to our practice and it not cause a great disruption. But years ago, you and I had a conversation about amalgam separators. We knew it was coming. At the time, most of the separators, and we'll get into the different types, were starting to come on the market, and there was some questions being raised. And we're going to try to answer some of those questions today, like what's going on with those that have been installed, right? What's available now, right? Because there's some cool technology, right, John? And actually, we're going to share some reviews in this podcast live stream today from CRA and clinical research that has been done by Gordon Christensen's group on amalgam separators. We're excited to kind of share what we've came up with, what we're going to use in our practice, actually what we've installed.
And 2, what we've actually heard from the people you should be talking to about a lot of equipment purchases, which is your service technician. If you're not asking your service tech what to do and what to buy and what they're having problems with, then you're really missing out on a valuable resource because they see the installs, they see the problems, they go to the training, so they kind of know which companies have it together and which are just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. And this amalgam separator thing has been interesting. Like Wes said, you know, we've got a deadline coming up. The EPA has said July 14th after delaying it a couple times. Now, I know some of you listening to this all the West Coast people mostly are just going to tune this out because they've pretty much all been in states that have had this requirement for years,
Right.
and some New England states. But there's a lot of states, including ours, that haven't had this requirement on a state level. They've kind of deferred to the federal level, and the EPA is saying, okay, no more waiting, guys. It's time. But I think just like anything, when there's new technology, the prudent idea is to wait and see what works and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening now with the change here, after Wes and I have talked to lots of people who have been using these, we've talked to our service technicians, we've read reviews. And, once again, one of the points of this show, where can you find this information besides us and maybe CRA, which kudos to CRA for doing what they always do, which is high quality data and research. But let me just give you an example. So CRA comes out with an issue. I think it was 4 months. I don't know. It's longer than that. Probably 9 months ago now, maybe 6 months, 9 months. Knowing this is coming, and they did some reviews of some of the available amalgam separators. We're going to get a little bit more into that later, but one of them that was reviewed really well, which is made by Crosstex, called the Cyclone, and we'll get into how they reviewed things and all that later. But just suffice to say for this second, it was probably the best one reviewed overall in some ways that they measured, including cost of ownership, which is one of the major things we're going to get into. But I ordered it. So that was the one I ordered. I ordered it 6-7 months ago. Yep. And I kept hearing from my service people or my supply people, like, it's not coming, it's not coming. I'm like, where is it? Where is it? And it turns out it got discontinued. It got discontinued just a couple months after the review comes out. So just imagine, you spend all this time looking at this thing, this product, and you didn't know that. So maybe you bought it and it gets discontinued. So you don't want to be the first to jump on this, but you certainly don't want to be the last, because a lot of local municipalities, including even my small town, are requiring us to fill out information basically saying, here's what we bought. It's in compliance with the EPA rule. So let's get down to it, Wes. How do we make decisions about this? And I think that it's most of you are familiar with the majority of people out there have bought a unit which installs basically at the end of the plumbing in the office. So you right before you get into your suction unit, you install this thing, which, if you haven't looked at it, it basically is essentially kind of like panning for gold idea, right? You're going to have the solids, the gold, if you will, which in this case is crappy amalgam, is going to basically drop to the bottom of this container because of its weight. It's going to be filtered out. And then at some point, that's going to get to a high enough level, it's going to clog up the unit. And you're going to start to see a reduction in suction. There's different ways these different things bypass that to give you continued suction until you're ready to recycle. And so you send off the cartridge, and that thing goes off to the company. They handle the recycling. Now, you're going to pay several things with these. You're going to pay an install fee, along with, of course, the purchase price. And then you're going to pay a recycling fee for the cartridges. And Wes, you looked too, along with me, at the whole office ones, and that was originally where I was going. Right? I mean, we were both going to go.
I mean, we both really had.
That was what was out there. We thought
we decided that this is what we were buying. In fact, our rep used one of the similar companies I use, and we both talked to some of the same people. And he started just leaning us towards one that he was seeing as one, it was a reasonable cost to recycle the amalgam, but
he's seen a lot of them is really why I think he's seen a lot of them.
He's seen a lot of them, but then there were some problems, John.
Yeah.
There were some problems, and what ends up in the amalgam separator is not just amalgam, right? Because this is these whole office ones, right? Especially if you run a lot of hygiene. Now, I'm running a lot of hygiene right now. Normally, I average 2 hygienists a day. John averages what, 3 or 4, right?
3 to 4, yeah.
Yeah. So 3 to 4 hygienists a day. And when you're doing that many prophies, guess what else ends up in the amalgam separator? Pumice, prophy paste.
Right.
And, we if you go in, listen, right before COVID, right? We took 2 days and we just gutted everything. We took all of our hoses off. I mean, we went down to the nitty gritty. Guess what rooms were the nastiest? Not the surgical suites, not the restorative suites, the hygiene operatories, right? They had the most corrosion. They had the most, it's not because they weren't maintained. It was across the board. It was just across the board. And it's this pumice, this paste that just destroys these amalgam separators. Not necessarily destroys them, but it fills them up, right?
Yep.
And guess what?
Yep.
When one fills up, you have to send it off.
You're paying.
Otherwise you lose suction, right? You're paying.
And so let's get into kind of how, and I don't want to take anything away from CRA. We're not going to post or publish what they already put out. You should subscribe to what they're doing.
It's a worthy
because
place
what they're doing is worthwhile. So shout out to them. But I just want to summarize how they kind of tested these things. They test them for the capacity in liters. They tested them for the cost of initial purchase, and they tested them for the cost to recycle the cartridge. And without getting into nitty gritty, what we're going to say is that most of you are going to hear about a couple of companies. And one of those is Solmatex. That's a company that's very common, the HG5. There's 3 different sizes, the HG5 regular, the mini, and the HV or high volume. And to give you an idea of price, because this is one of the highest market penetration of any company is the Solmatex. And it costs, figure $2,500 for installation and purchase-ish, right? It could vary depending on your office configuration and the size that you buy. And then to recycle the cartridge costs somewhere around $400. That's the cartridge plus the cost to send it in. So you're no small thing, right? You're talking a couple $1,000s to buy it, install it, say $2,000-3,000. And then you're talking about the cartridge. So then there's some other companies. Interestingly, the ADA has weighed in on this, which they don't usually do on a lot of these types of things, but they've endorsed, as you see here, this is the Health First company. They sell or distribute Rebec Catch HG amalgam separators, which you can see. Here's the page. And if you scroll down, you'll see special promotion, 50% off. They have a list of the ones they offer. You can see some pricing here. This is right off their website. $1,000 here. We got, up to a couple $1,000s. And I can tell you that the install costs on these are roughly equivalent. The recycling is roughly equivalent. Some of these are a little more expensive. Some of them are not. Some of them have higher capacity. So this one, for instance, the Amalgam, the Catch HD 1000, this one's pretty stout size-wise. And, so CRA did some interesting discussions or interesting research on this, and they found that if you bought certain systems that had higher volume, that was beneficial because the cost or it took longer for these things to fill up. And some of these huge ones that you see here, a couple $1,000s, they have a 1-year capacity is what they claim.
And look, they're really building into these, John, right? Here's the interesting thing is that these are designed for, practices that use air abrasion. Hey, stay tuned. Stay tuned for an air abrasion episode because we've got some interesting stuff coming, John, right? On that.
For sure.
There's some stuff coming.
Some new cool stuff going on in that world. But so they're even mentioning it here on their website, which is interesting. They know that there's issues with prophy jets, air abrasion, prophy paste. So I had, so then you start to ask, Wes, okay, so this, you can look at CRA, you can look at these companies, they have their claims about how long they last, about what all gets in there. But how do you actually know which one to buy and how long they actually last and what's the cost? And CRA
Without being
to
sold,
estimate.
John, is that what you're saying?
Right.
I mean,
CRA
right? Because
tried to estimate that, and they looked at the liter capacities of these things, and they tried to estimate based upon a number of hygienists and all this, and it's very hard. They did a good job, but it's very hard. So I think this is where you have to start going out and talking to people, Wes. You have to start going out and talking to your service technicians, talking to other dentists who have had these for longer than what you have, and ask for their opinion. And you need to look at comparable offices. Don't go to the oral surgery office if you're a restorative dentist. Don't go to the endodontist. You need to talk to somebody who's running the similar amount of hygiene.
And I talked to a guy the other day that he has a young practice. He has 1.5 hygienist, practices 28 hours a week or something like that. I mean, it's a good sized practice, but I mean, like, he's not cranking out hygiene, right? And I said, well, how many? He has a whole office. I think he has a Somatex, a whole office, amalgam separator. I said, he just built his office 2 years ago, so they installed it. And I was like, so have you replaced your cartridge yet? He was like, no. And so you can't use that, right, as a direct comparison to your own practice unless you are running the exact same amount of hygiene. Right, everything is based on your hygiene, right, John? On this purchase.
I mean, that's what I'm finding as we've been talking, as you and I both have been talking to the people who really are the real deal on this, which are the service techs. They will tell you that the how long these cartridges are lasting all depends on how much hygiene you're running. So, to give you an example, a good friend of mine, pediatric dentist, who does a lot of 30-minute prophies, right, on kids. So tons of hygiene rolling through this office. Big office.
This is a great story.
Yeah, he bought one of the huge Rebec units, and he installed it in a new office that they built. Okay, so it's brand new office, brand new plumbing, all the best scenario, great suction unit. I've seen it. I know it's legit. And so I was talking to the service tech about this problem, and he said, oh man, he said, this guy, he just got that thing, and 6 months later, we go in there because he says his suction's not working. And they go in there, and the entire thing, and he said when they opened it up, he said it looked like taking the top off of a cake container. And he's like, you take it off, and there's this exact shape of the recycling receptacle is all pumice. It's all prophy paste he said it looked like a loaf of bread. And he said, so that thing was done, and he had to go out, and that cartridge, I think, was a $700 replacement recycling. So this guy's like, whoa. So you're saying that every 6 months I'm going to pay $700. And now, I mean, we all pay lots of money for stuff in our practices, but you start to add up the cost of this over a certain amount of time. And we've been hearing these types of reports all over. We've been hearing about people every 3 to 4 months, every 6 months. I've not been hearing from the service techs that these things are lasting a year, Wes, unless you have a low volume practice, right? Is that kind of what you're hearing too? Yeah,
we talked to my service tech and just the other day because we knew we were going to be recording this, and he said it is most of the time you're replacing these things every 6 to 9 months, and I guess some people that are listening to this say, well, they just underestimated the volume or the amount of hygiene that they're doing. Well, here's the thing is maybe they did, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they jumped on this installation thinking like that really wouldn't be a problem, because no one was talking about prophy paste really on these until just in the past year or two. And,
because people didn't know until they'd been out for long enough. And the companies have kind of over time, they've got better designs, but they've also dwindled down in the brands to where there's not as many available as before.
Problems lead to solutions, John. And we like to talk about, here's all the problems we're having. One, They're expensive to install. You're not just getting away with just the installation. You're going to have to actually send out a cartridge and buy a new one. You have to figure out how much prophy paste you're using. Then the other problem is like, what if I'm working in an extraction clinic and only taking out amalgam like once every now and then? Or what if I'm in the operating room? Do I have to like install something in a special like operating room hospital situation? What if I'm at a RAM clinic? All these problems, all these things that started popping up over the last, say, 24 months to 3 years have led to some pretty unique solutions, John. And actually, one of the products, right, is one that we bought. So let's get into that, right? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I heard probably about a year ago that there was a product that there was a company, a well-known dental supply company, was starting to sell. It was kind of one of the supply companies that maybe everybody uses for their small supplies like hoses and sections, American Dental Accessories, and well-known, but kind of smaller company. And it was interesting design because it was designed for single operatory use. So the idea would be that you would install a separator only in the operatories where you were doing restorative dentistry and removing amalgam, but not have to install them in the hygiene operatories and not have to install them right before your main line of your suction. So I kind of started doing some digging on some reviews with this, and I heard some good things. So the other cool thing was with this thing is, the price is only $100 for the unit.
$100?
Yeah, $99. So I was like, okay, let's buy one and let's try it out and see what we get. Does it, how easy is it to install? How does it work? So we installed the first one on one of my operatories, and it was super, super easy. We're not getting paid by this company or anything. Don't worry about that. We haven't even ever talked to them. But installed one, super easy to install. You can, by the way, if you're listening to this, you want to go over to the website. It's ddshgsolutions.com. It's called the Simple One. And so you install it. Basically, it's just two hoses. You just splice it into after your suction trap, right? So you have your suction trap on your unit and you splice it in after that. And it is so easy to install. They've got an installation video on there that's just very, very easy to use. And it really was basically a no drama install. There was very little involved with this. It was incredibly easy, just as good as far as EPA, satisfying all the EPA requirements. And the real advantage of this thing is you don't have to use these in your hygiene operatories because you don't need them in your hygiene operatories. You're not removing amalgam. So there's no prophy paste going into your system or going into your separator. So you can put it, as they're kind of showing the video here, you can put it in the back behind the chair. We just have ours mounted under our unit, like our bracket table essentially. So we didn't even have to splice into the main umbilical, suction in the room. You can install it under the floor. However your building allows you to do it here, it's easiest. And you can see there's little red caps. You basically, when you're done, when this thing starts to lose suction, which they claim is in around 9 months. I haven't had mine long enough to say for sure, but so far I haven't seen any decrease in suction. But when you're done, you just unhook the hoses, you take the red caps, you cap the end of those little splicers, and you just splice a new one in. So what happens is, the other nice thing about this is you can just keep an extra one in the office for $99. Right? And when one goes down, if it gets full or you start to lose suction, you just cap it, splice the next one in. It takes literally, I promise you, less than 30 seconds to swap the new one in. A lot different than having to call your service guy to come out and service the cartridges. And then you can buy one of these buckets to recycle it and send it back to the company. And they're very inexpensive also to recycle. But $99 per amalgam separator. According to the company, they recommend changing it out annually. Now we'll see, right? It depends on how much amalgam that you are removing in your practice. If you're removing a ton of big old amalgams, maybe, it's going to be sooner if you do that rarely and you change your traps out too, like that's the other thing. You got to maintain your suction lines. They have specific instructions. So far, so good with this product. And another product, Wes, let's talk about this other product while we're on the subject of interesting solutions. Talk about Capped All. Go to capped-all.com. Interesting product, Wes. Talk about this because this just kind of fell into our laps from actually my Shine service tech brought this brochure in.
Yeah, this right here to me is interesting because this solves a lot of problems. Like if and I don't know what we're doing at the hospital. I'm an attending there, but I don't go to the OR anymore. And I'm interested to ask my attending how they're compliant in the operating room. And to me, this would be the way, right? Because this is like, okay, let's say that you're in a practice or you're in an area, right? And you not seeing a lot of amalgams. Maybe you just don't have a lot, or maybe you're doing pediatric dentistry, right? And you're not taking amalgams out on pediatric teeth, and you're thinking, okay, I'm never taking amalgams out on pediatric teeth, or it's occasionally I ran into an amalgam. Well, here you go. This is how you're compliant. You keep some of these in stock, and if the EPA ever shows up, well, this is an EPA approved, handheld amalgam separator, and it's called Capped All. And I just think it's one of the...
you plug it into your high volume suction.
Yeah, it's just one of the coolest things.
It's single use.
Yeah, throw it away.
It's not designed to be reused.
No, so you don't throw it away. You put it in a package.
No. Right. So when you're done with that amalgam removal, you throw it into a waste container, and when you got enough of them in there, you send them back. And now that is ingenious, man. I mean, let's just pause for a second and just talk about if you're like the guy that waits till July 13th to implement this product. I mean, you could just say, okay, I'm going to spend $175. I'm buying these things and I'm now compliant, at least as long as I plug this thing in every time I take an amalgam out. Obviously, this is not cost effective for the practice. That's one of our listeners just made the great comment. If you work on military patients, you're going to have to change the filters weekly on those operatory ones. That's true. If you're in the military, Capped All, this is not the way to go. There's going to be a shortage on Capped Alls if the military gets a hold of this.
But like, think about this though. For $5 essentially, right? Because $5. Is that right? So 5 times 25.
Say figure 6 or 7, yeah.
6 or 7 time it's all said and done. Right, but I mean, like in a situation like the OR, right? You're going to use it and then you're going to recycle it, right? And I just think in those situations that this right here is a great solution. So I'm excited for this one. I mean, what we're going to do here. Here's what we're going to do is we are going to buy some of these, okay? And, John, we need to do that. We need to just go ahead and order up some. And we're going to use these in our offices. Let's say you're like John and I can do some stuff in our hygiene rooms or in our expanded functions rooms, right? But occasionally, like if you're doing these operatory installed, like I'm going to take the simple one and I'm going to put it in my operatories that I'm using all the time. But on the off chance, right, that something happens, right, and you have to either bypass the simple one or whatever, and you want to remain compliant, right? Yep. That's just, you want to remain compliant, or you're in the hygiene op, throw on a Capped All and try it out. We're going to try this out. We're going to try this out even in the operatories that have the simple ones because we really want to know how well this works.
Yeah, I just want to know how well it works. It's just a cool product, a great idea product. I'm interested to see though if this stays around, because I think this is a product that's meant for the late comer to have something that the company can send them that they can get them compliant. But I think as it is for now, what we would recommend, I think the dental guys would recommend, is that you definitely if your goal is to have something that is the whole office, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. The advantage of that, the advantage of the Solmatex or the Rebec or these others, is that it's out of sight. You can call your service tech when something starts happening. You can get it done. You don't really have to deal with something but frankly, you're going to end up having to deal with something here. You're going to have to replace some cartridge, something annually. And so if you think that something like the whole office one is what you want to go for, just take a moment, if you haven't already purchased them, and take a look at the simple one and see if it fits your practice model. It even has an adapter. You can adapt it directly onto high-speed suction tubing if you just want to have it. Like one person that I talked to said, here's what they're doing, Wes. They have it on one suction, one high volume suction only, that they're using for amalgam removal. Okay, so you have two high volume suctions in their room.
Yeah.
They have the separator on one if they're doing amalgam removal, and they only use it for that. Now, I mean, that's not difficult. If you've got a trap that's got 2 or 3 different HVE adapters.
Yeah, my ADEC unit has that. It has two suctions going into the trap. You could easily rig that up to say, this is my amalgam. This is my amalgam suction right here.
And if we're removing amalgam, we use the one on the right, the high volume on the right. And if we're not, we never use that. And then it would last even longer because you're not having to do it. Now, I mean, we're nickel and diming a little bit on that. That's you don't have to go to that extent. I'm not doing that. Mine is after the trap that I have it installed. But still, I think this allows you the options. That's really what this one gives you, is options. And if it works as well as it has so far, for the time frame they're talking about, that's not a bad deal for $100. So check it out. Go ahead. You can buy it from. Go ahead, Wes. Go ahead.
Well, it's because that's what we're recommending right now for our size practice. I have them running 3 hygienists a day, and I have a 5 operatory practice. And John, you're running 3 to 4 hygienists a day and a 2 doc practice. And this is what you've installed, and I think it's a great way for you to be compliant. My local rep was happy to install this, and we actually you could install this yourself. I mean, if you really if you really wanted to. I mean, it's not hard. We're talking about some simple things here, so check it out. I think it's a great thing. We ordered it up. It was in my office within a week. So
yep. And there's an adapter kit too. I just learned about to install it in terms of like how to hold it. Like there's a way to mount it to things, in case you're worried about it hanging down. So you can check that out.
Yeah, it comes with instructions and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So check this stuff out, and give us your feedback. What we would love to hear, because again, I think that the other place we get good information on these decisions is from other people that are using stuff. So if you're using the Simple One or Capdoll or the Solmatex or the Rebec or whatever, give us some feedback. How are they working for you? How often are you having to replace the cartridges? I would love if we could put together, using this live stream, maybe a little bit of a thread here on Facebook on what people's experiences have been with the different amalgam separators. Are you happy with what you got? Do you wish you could change it up? The next time that the recycling time is up for the canister, should you just go ahead and switch over to a per operatory one? That's the kind of decision that we'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. So leave us some feedback, and Wes, I'll let you close out the show because this is kind of a short and sweet one.
Yeah, short and sweet. We wanted to kind of cover this. We've got some things upcoming. There's a lot of left to release, right, of some of the things that we recorded over COVID. And we've got a great episode coming up that we collaborated with the Academy of Osseointegration. It's not been released yet. Years ago, John and I did an episode on how to work with your referring doctors, right? And also, when I say referring doctors, is as a general dentist, how am I working with my oral surgeon? How am I working with my periodontist? How am I working with my endodontist? We interviewed Dr. Robert Lemke as a part of a collaboration with the Academy of Osseointegration, and it was a great episode. We talk a little bit about what he's done over the years in his practice. That's coming up in a future release. I'm excited about that one. And so, listen, If you're not a subscriber of the Dental Guys on iTunes or some kind of podcast catcher out there, you need to subscribe. You need to also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're on Facebook or YouTube. So click the subscribe bell, click the notification icon so that you know that you can that we're live or that we've released new episodes. And give us some feedback too. I mean, we need to know what you guys are thinking about our episodes, what you would like for us to cover. It seems like every week we get stuff, if not every day, about things that you've seen or heard, or maybe just what you've liked hearing from us. And that's kind of how we start to form these shows up. We've got a lot more content coming. As always, there's something to talk about in dentistry. So stay tuned. So for John, I'm Wes, and we are the Dental Guys.